You know, when you look at something like the Grand Canyon, you're usually told it was carved over millions of years, right? But what if it wasn't? Today, we're diving into two theories that say our planet's most incredible features were actually forged in a flash of violence, not over the slow march of time.
So it really all boils down to one central question. How do we read the rocks? Does the Earth's geology tell a story of slow, steady, gradual change, or does it point to something else entirely, evidence of a massive, rapid, and truly planet-altering upheaval?
And this quote right here, it just throws the standard textbook view out the window. It's arguing that if you look at the evidence without any preconceived notions about deep time, the rocks aren't whispering a story of slow change. No, they're screaming about sudden, violent disruption. And this really lays out the two competing ideas perfectly. On one hand, you've got gradualism, the idea that big changes happen from lots of small changes over tons of time. On the other hand, you have catastrophism, which says Earth's biggest features were shaped in sudden, world-shattering events. That's the core conflict we're exploring.
All right, so let's dig into the first of these catastrophic models. We have to start with the foundation, and that's Dr. Walt Brown's hydroplate theory. This is really the framework that the whole idea of a single global event is built on.
Okay, so the core concept of the hydroplate theory is pretty wild. Try to picture this. A huge layer of water, maybe half a mile thick, trapped about 10 miles under the entire surface of the Earth. It's under unimaginable pressure, and the theory says that eventually the crust just couldn't hold it anymore, and it ruptured on a global scale.
And that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, what would that even look like? The entire planet's crust cracking open and unleashing a subterranean ocean? The scale of that is it's almost impossible to wrap your head around.
This image gives us a little taste of the kind of raw power we're talking about here. This isn't some gentle flood. We're talking about supersonic fountains of water and rock blasting out from deep inside the planet, launching material way up into the atmosphere and maybe even into space. It's an explosive release of planetary-scale energy. So the hydroplate theory breaks this whole thing down into 4 phases. First up, you have the rupture, the big planet-wide crack. That's followed by the flood as all that water erupts onto the surface. Then, and this part is crucial, you get the drift phase, where the continents, the hydroplates, are sliding around incredibly fast on that layer of water. And finally, you get the recovery, where everything settles into the world we recognize today, with all its new mountains and oceans.
But listen, that's just the foundation. Now we get to the expansion of that idea. This is Darrell Waters' unified theory, and it basically takes the mechanics of the hydroplate theory and just cranks the dial all the way up.
The unified theory pretty much asks, okay, if an event this powerful really happened, what would the full consequences be? It proposes that this rupture wasn't just a global flood. It was an event so incredibly violent that it had ripple effects across our entire solar system. And to give you just a little perspective on the forces we're talking about, look at this number, 50 miles per hour. That's the speed the unified theory suggests continents were moving, not inches per year. We're talking about a landmass the size of India moving at highway speeds. It's just mind-boggling. So you're probably wondering, how is that even possible? Well, the theory brings in some pretty high-energy physics to explain it. It says the water was supercritical, which is this weird state that's neither liquid nor gas, and it acted as a near-perfect frictionless lubricant. It also adds a Z-pinch effect, a massive electromagnetic phenomenon, to provide the raw energy for all this. The idea is that the crust didn't just crack, it snapped, like a gigantic spring, releasing all that tension and accelerating the continents.
Okay, so we've got Brown's foundational theory and then Waters' high-energy expansion of it. So let's put them side by side to really nail down how the unified theory builds on the original hydroplate theory. This chart breaks it down perfectly. First, look at the scope. The hydroplate theory is terrestrial. It's all about a global flood on Earth. The unified theory goes cosmic, saying it affected the whole solar system. Then there's the energy. HPT is powered by pressurized water. The unified theory adds that powerful Z-pinch effect into the mix. And the result? HPT explains new continents and mountains. The unified theory says, yeah, all that, plus the origin of asteroids, comets, and even features on the moon. And this brings us to the metaphor. It shifts from a global rupture to seeing Earth as a giant cannon.
And that cannon metaphor is meant pretty literally here. The unified theory proposes that the material blasted off the Earth during that rupture, all that rock and water, didn't all come back down.
A huge amount of it was launched into space and just kept going. And according to this theory, that debris is what became the asteroids, comets, and meteoroids we see in our solar system today.
So, this all leads to a final, really powerful idea that ties everything together. If you use these catastrophic theories to reinterpret our planet's history, what does that make the Earth itself? This quote just nails it. The whole idea is to reframe geology as forensics. The solar system is the mystery, and Earth holds all the clues. It's not a museum of ancient life, it's the scene of a single violent crime.
So the big takeaway is this. Everything we call a geological feature, like the Himalayas or the Marianas Trench, gets completely reinterpreted. They're not seen as the products of slow time anymore. Instead, they're the scars, the wounds, the injuries left over from the single most violent event in our planet's history.
And that's the thought I really want to leave you with. It's a radical shift in perspective. If you stop seeing our world's geology as just a product of old age, and you start seeing it as a collection of scars from a single catastrophe, what story do you think those injuries are trying to tell us?